Hi, guys. Welcome to Pacific Bitcoin. It is really nice to see so many friends in the audience. I am Vijay Boyapati. I am the author of The Bullish Case For Bitcoin, and that's what I'll be presenting today for the first time ever, actually. I have a short announcement at the end of my talk, so I hope you guys will stick around for that. So let's begin. With a market capitalization of hundreds of billions of dollars, the bullish case for Bitcoin may seem completely obvious, right? This is the best performing asset in the last decade, and it's not even close. Alternatively, this could be the biggest bubble in history, a modern-day tulip mania or South Sea bubble. Neither is true. As I will argue, the bullish case for Bitcoin is compelling, but far from obvious. Now, those of you who have read my book or the article which preceded it will know that I'm paraphrasing its introduction. When I first started writing the article in early 2017, I had hoped that it would be read by maybe a few friends and family members. I wanted to clear up the many misconceptions that people had about Bitcoin at the time, including misconceptions of some very prominent Bitcoiners. The reception I received for the article was completely unexpected. The article and book have been read over 1 million times and translated into 20 different languages. And it's... thank you. It is honestly so humbling for me to be part of so many Bitcoin journeys and honestly to be speaking in front of you guys today. What I learned from the unexpected reception to this article was that there's a huge latent desire in the population to understand Bitcoin and to understand what I think is the most important question and most misunderstood question in economics. Why does Bitcoin have any value at all? Let alone, why has that value been steadily increasing for over a decade now? Do not trust any Bitcoin critic, or any economist for that matter, who does not have a coherent answer to this question. To answer this question, we have to answer a much more fundamental question. Why does money have any value? And to answer that question, we have to begin by exploring the origins of money. In the earliest human societies, before we had money, trade between people took place using barter. Barter-based trade is incredibly inefficient and limited in geographic scope. One of the big problems with barter-based trade is something known as the double coincidence of wants problem. If I am a fisherman and you are an apple grower and you don't want fish at the same moment that I want apples, the trade will not occur. And this greatly diminishes trade-based wealth in society. Over time, humans developed a desire for certain collectibles for their rarity and symbolic value. And this includes shells, beads, and flint. And I'm going to show you some of the collectibles that humans used in the past. Cowrie shells used in the Pacific Islands. Native American beads, also called wampum. And shells that were used in ancient Sumeria. Our innate desire for collectibles gave us a distinct evolutionary advantage over our nearest biological competitors, Neanderthals, because we were able to, unlike them, we were able to pass value on through time, giving us the beginnings of capital accumulation. Now, this quote comes from the brilliant essay by Nick Szabo on the origins of money, where he explains that these collectibles served as a sort of proto-money. They were used really infrequently and may have only been traded a few times in a person's lifetime. They were used more as what we would call today a store of value, rather than a medium of exchange used on a daily basis. Now, as societies grew and trade routes developed, these proto-monies, or stores of value, came to compete against each other. And when two stores of value compete, it's the specific attributes that make for a good store of value that allows one to outcompete another at the margin over time. So what are the attributes of a good store of value? Well, we've known about them for a very long time. Aristotle even wrote about them. So let's list them out here. Durable. A good store of value should be durable or not easy to destroy. Or another way of saying it is it shouldn't be perishable. So a good example of this is gold is a better store of value than wheat, for instance, which is perishable. A good store of value should be portable, so it can facilitate long-distance trade, and if you need to, it becomes necessary, you can flee with your savings. A good store of value should be fungible. Every unit of the store of value should be equivalent to every other unit. So, for example, gold is a better store of value than diamonds, because diamonds are irregular in shape and quality. A good store of value should be verifiable. You should be able to tell quickly and cheaply that what you think you have is exactly what it is. A good store of value should be divisible so that it can facilitate both large and small trade. This was less important in early human societies where trade was infrequent, but it became much more important as trade flourished and the quantities being traded needed to be more precise. A good store of value should be scarce, and this is probably, if any of the attributes should be emphasized, it is this one, because it taps into our innate desire for that which is rare. A good store of value should have established history. The longer a store of value exists, the more people will trust that it can be used as a store of value and will be sought out for that purpose. This one was not written by Aristotle. He did not know about censorship resistance, but this has become more important in our modern world with pervasive surveillance and capital controls. So along these attributes that make for a good store of value, let's compare Bitcoin to its ancient and modern competitors for the role of store of value and see how it compares. What does it even mean for Bitcoin to be durable? Well, Bitcoins are only as durable as the network on which they exist, and Bitcoin has only existed for 14 years. But in its defense, that network has proven to be very resilient to all kinds of attacks from hackers and nation states. Gold is the absolute king of durability. Gold that was used by the ancient pharaohs still exists today. Fiat currencies are only as durable as the institution which issues them, and we all know through history that nation states come and go, and the currencies that they issue go along with them. Bitcoin is perhaps the most portable store of value that has ever been used by man. Hundreds of millions or billions of dollars in value can easily be transported in your pocket in a USB drive across the world without anyone knowing. Gold, because of its physicality, is obviously much less portable. Fiat currencies, being fundamentally digital, are portable except for the fact that they're subject to capital controls and regulations. So it can take time. If you've ever done an international wire, it can take multiple days. One of Bitcoin's weaknesses is fungibility, because governments can identify specific Bitcoins on the blockchain and say to companies, you're not allowed to accept or trade Bitcoins that come from this address, which may cause the value of those Bitcoins to trade at a discount to other Bitcoins. Bitcoin is incredibly verifiable. It's easy and cheap to verify Bitcoin if you run a Raspberry Pi or a $30 node. There are no counterfeit Bitcoins trading on the Bitcoin network. This is unique. There are a lot of counterfeit gold coins and gold bars out there in the market and a lot of counterfeit fiat. Bitcoin is also incredibly divisible. It's just as easy to trade a millionth of a penny as it is to trade millions of dollars of value. Bitcoin is also the most scarce store of value that has ever existed. It has ultimate scarcity. We know with certainty and by design that there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. Both gold and fiat currencies are subject to inflation. I should say, however, that gold is not subject to political inflation, so it is superior to fiat currencies. Perhaps Bitcoin's biggest weakness is established history. It's only existed for 14 years, whereas its venerable cousin gold has existed for millennia, and people have trusted it as a store of value for a very, very long time. I should say, however, that the trust people have in Bitcoin is not linear, it's asymptotic. What do I mean by that? The time it takes for people to have most of the trust level that they have in gold will not take thousands of years for Bitcoin. It will probably take a few decades for people to believe that Bitcoin is a permanent institution in the world, in the same way that they believe that the internet is now a permanent institution in the world, and the internet has really only been with us a few decades. Bitcoin is superior to its competitors in censorship resistance. Gold is easy to confiscate because of its physicality. All of the gold in the US was confiscated in 1933. And fiat currencies are easily subjected to capital controls and confiscation. So here, along these attributes, is the reason why Bitcoin has value and why its market share has been increasing over time. It's not some rainbow chart or some complicated on-chain model. It's a fundamental comparative advantage of Bitcoin as a store of value compared to its competitors. Bitcoin is a new asset that allows something that has never been possible before. For the first time ever, it's possible to secure and transport your wealth without anyone's permission, and to keep your savings free from debasement. These are the twin pillars of Bitcoin's value proposition. I want to break this tweet from 2019 down back into the attributes that make for a good store of value and connect it to what we were just talking about before. What does it mean to secure your Bitcoins? Well, firstly, it means that you know what you have is what you think you have, so it should be easy to verify. Verifiability. Securing your Bitcoins also means that they're not easy to confiscate, so censorship resistance. What does it mean to be able to transport your wealth without anyone's permission? Well, it should be easy to transport, so portability, and it should not be susceptible to capital controls, so censorship resistance. What does it mean that your wealth cannot be debased? It means that Bitcoin supply cannot be manipulated and is limited and has a limited supply. So that speaks to the attribute of scarcity. So let's go back to the attributes and consider those specific attributes that make the twin pillars of Bitcoin's value proposition. So what you see is along these attributes, Bitcoin is not just a slight improvement to its competitors. It is vastly superior to them. And this is why Bitcoin continues to gain market share over time. Now, you guys are probably wondering, what does all this talk of stores of value have to do with money? Isn't money a medium of exchange? Well, yes and no. It's, I think, one of the great tragedies of modern economics that money has been defined as one of its functions. Money does not begin immediately as a medium of exchange. That takes time. Money evolves in a process known as monetization. And I want to go through the steps of monetization with you to explain how that happens. All monies begin as collectibles, things valued just for their own sake. This was true for shells, it was true for beads, gold, and even Bitcoin. Bitcoin started out as a digital curiosity that was held by cypherpunks well before it had a market price or could be used for anything. It was just a cool thing to play with. Now, once something becomes more and more owned as a collectible, people will start thinking of it for use as a store of value. That is, they won't hold it just as a whimsy, but they'll think of it as a means for transporting value through time. When enough people own something as a store of value, its purchasing power will plateau. Once everyone on Earth owns some Bitcoin, it's not going to keep going up, 100% on average every year. And once its purchasing power plateaus, it will become suitable for use as a medium of exchange, which is what a lot of people think of as money today. It was a huge mistake of many early Bitcoiners to think that Bitcoin should be first and foremost a medium of exchange. There is a huge opportunity cost to using something as a medium of exchange when it is still transitioning to becoming a store of value and rapidly increasing in purchasing power. We're all familiar with the story of Laszlo Hajneks, who bought 2 pizzas with 10,000 Bitcoins. And I bet we can all agree that Laszlo would probably prefer to have those 10,000 Bitcoins back rather than spent them on those 2 pizzas. When something is used widely as a medium of exchange, other goods will eventually become priced in terms of that monetary good. And that's when it reaches the final stage of becoming a unit of account. The US dollar is a unit of account in the United States because all other goods are priced in terms of US dollars. So when you go to the grocery store, you see all other goods priced in terms of US dollars. Any monetary good that is not yet a unit of account can be thought of as being partly monetized. So that's where Bitcoin is today. It's transitioning from being a digital collectible to being a widely owned store of value. It's also where gold is. Gold used to be a fully fledged money, a global unit of account, but then it was demonetized in the 20th century and has gone back to being just a store of value. So we've talked about the evolution of money. What does the shape of that evolution actually look like? One of the things I find most fascinating as a student of economics is that we get to watch this monetization of Bitcoin happen in real time. The monetization of gold took many thousands of years, and no one knows exactly what that looks like. With Bitcoin, we do know what it looks like. The monetization of Bitcoin happens in a series of cycles, with each cycle being a fractal pattern of increasing magnitude. What does that mean? It just means that if you look at the price chart of one of these cycles and overlay it over the price chart of another cycle, it looks very similar. So let's take a look. This is the price chart of Bitcoin in 2013, the 2013 cycle. This is the 2017 cycle, the 2021 cycle. And what you can see is these charts match the classic shape of what's known as a Gartner hype cycle, which is the adoption curve that is followed by many new technologies once they're created, the microwave, the TV, and even the internet. So let's consider what a Gartner hype cycle looks like. When the new technology is created, prices are bid up in a burst of enthusiasm by participants in the cycle who are reachable in that cycle. What do I mean by reachable? It's the people who understand enough about the technology to even think about investing in it. So for example, with Bitcoin, the first cycle was defined by cypherpunks who knew anything about Bitcoin. Like, I didn't know enough about Bitcoin to know about investing in it, so I couldn't have been part of that cycle. Once the supply of people who are reachable in a cycle is exhausted, prices crash. And then there's a period of intense disillusionment and this sense that the whole thing was a complete fad and not transformative at all. It's kind of where we are now. Eventually, you reach a price plateau where all the disillusionment is flushed out, and the people who had strong conviction in the technology remain and are joined by a new cohort of people who will define the next cycle. So I want to show you one more Gartner hype cycle and see if you guys can recognize it. It looks remarkably similar to a Bitcoin hype cycle and follows the classic shape of the Gartner adoption curve. Can anyone guess what that is? It'll help if I put the axes on, I think. This was gold from 2000 to 2017. I think it's very telling that gold followed and follows the classic shape of a hype cycle. One might speculate that hype cycles are inherent to the social dynamic of monetization. So let's summarize. What is the bullish case for Bitcoin? Bitcoin is a new form of money that is transitioning from a digital collectible that was only valued by cypherpunks and hardcore libertarians to being a widely owned store of value. It's increasing in its market share, not because of any fancy model, but because it has fundamental comparative advantages as a store of value against its competitors. I think because of these attributes that make Bitcoin a great store of value, it will eventually reach complete adoption around the world. Its purchasing power will plateau, and it will become suitable as a medium of exchange. I also think because of these attributes, Bitcoin will eventually replace the US dollar as the global unit of account and the reserve currency of the world. I think Bitcoin will, one second, I'm getting ahead of myself. Bitcoin's adoption as a global reserve currency will have more than just profound economic consequences. It will also have major geopolitical consequences too. And I think Bitcoin will fulfill Charles de Gaulle's aspiration that no nation should have economic privilege over any other. Now, this is one of my favorite quotes, so I hope you'll tolerate me reading it to you. We consider it necessary that international trade be established, as it was the case before the great misfortunes of the world, on an indisputable monetary base, and one that does not bear the mark of any particular country. 50 years from now, I think that monetary base will be Bitcoin. Thank you. So I promised an announcement at the end of the talk, and as some of you guys who are my friends know, I've been interested in Bitcoin for over a decade now, and I've always been really supportive of Bitcoin-only businesses. And I'm really excited to announce today that I will be joining one of these businesses. I am joining Swan. I have been incredibly impressed with the team that Corey and Jan and Brady have put together. And I'm really grateful to Swan for having me. So let's go get Bitcoin in the hands of every person on Earth.